Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to PBA at Noon. I'm Paul Benwell, and I'm joined by my colleague, Sophie Caesar. Today, we have a very exciting story. This is an exploration company who is about to become a producer, Silver Bullet Mines Corp. Silver Bullet is a silver and copper exploration and development company with projects in the Western USA, and they trade on the TSX Venture under the symbol Sam Bob Mary Indian. Bullet recently provided a timetable for the production of their Buckeye silver mine near Globe, Arizona. They have blasted into the mine's treasure room. Samples will be taken once timbering and structural safety measures are taken. Assay labs are currently processing samples from stockpiled materials, and mill assembly and installation continue and should be ready within 4 weeks. And just today, they announced that they are the first company to mine in the metaverse. Joining us today is Peter Clausi, VP Capital Markets. Peter, the metaverse, good for you, man. First, you have to tell us about that. Everyone, please keep your questions. Send in your questions. We'll ask them at the end. Peter, go ahead. I'm looking forward to this presentation.
PDAC was always scheduled for the first week of March. We wanted to be different, so we plan to have our meta worlds ready for presentation at PDAC, which is now in June. But rather than delay the release, we thought we'd release it now. The metaverse is Facebook's way of creating an immersive environment. The World Wide Web has gone from modems to HTML to dynamic animations to Messenger, and all these apps change the way we interact. The metaverse is the next iteration of that. You put on your Oculus goggles, you've got your hand things, and you can walk around virtual worlds and do anything that the world creator has allowed you to do. And in our worlds, there's a lot of fun to be had, anything from flying a helicopter to a gun range, all the way through to learning facts about Silver Bullet Mines Inc. in a fun, immersive way. I got to tell you the truth. I didn't think that this would fly with management, because generally we're a bunch of old white guys, pale, male, and stale, as some people would call it. But everybody put up their hand and said, give it a shot, right? We're not targeting the same demographic everybody else is. This targets a different demographic of investor, tells our story to a new, different group of people. Press release went out at 11:36 this morning. I've already had 5 messages from people saying, good job. I've lost Paul, so I'll just keep going then. As everybody knows, we have 2 main properties: the Black Diamond, which is in Arizona, and the Washington Mine, which is in Idaho. I'll talk about Black Diamond first. The Black Diamond is home to 5 former producing mines. We concentrated on the Buckeye because it was the easiest to get back into production, low-hanging fruit. And it will be in production in about 4 weeks. It's been cleaned up. We have about 1,500 tons of material at surface. We have built our own mill. You know, there's minor parts to be attached. You get the ratchet out, tighten a few bolts, spray some WD-40. The mill is almost ready to go. We will be in production, which is astonishing. I had an argument with a gentleman about this who called us a junior. I said, no, we're not a junior company. We might be small, but we're not a junior. We have a business plan. We've executed on the business plan, and we'll be generating revenue. Under IFRS, it's likely we're generating revenue this quarter. And if not, that's just an accounting trick. We'll be generating revenue next quarter and being in cash flow, which is amazing. There's a gentleman whose name is Lobo, the due diligence guy, and he talks about the golden runway, also known as the pre-production sweet spot. And that's where we are. All of the costs have been incurred to build the mill, to build the mine, and now the cash flow begins imminently. So congratulations. I'm really proud of the field team who's done incredible work, the Murphy family, and to our CEO, John Carter. There's nobody else in the world who could have pulled this deal together except for John. And he's probably on the call going like, oh, shut up, Clausi. I don't care. John has done brilliant work in pulling this together, so kudos to him. The next thing we're going to do is go to Idaho. In December of 2020, we bought a property in Idaho called the Washington Mine. And as we said in one press release, we knew it was going to be good. We didn't know it was going to be this good. We put out a press release in January that we ran a blended bulk sample from 8 different locations at the Washington mine. And the blended bulk sample came out at 55 ounces per ton. For context, common wisdom, about 30 ounces per ton is considered bonanza. And our bulk sample ran 55 ounces per ton. So the thinking is get a contract miner, make the mine safe enough to go into, and start hauling material immediately. There's very little development work to be done there apart from making it safe. So out of the Washington mine in Arizona, we could be seeing revenue in 2022 as well. Don't know how much, don't know the grades, but if the blended bulk sample is any indication, it's going to be a wild year. What do we do after that for an encore? Well, we go to the McMorris mine, which is also on the Black Diamond down in Arizona. The McMorris mine is the site of the start of the legend of the Lone Ranger silver bullets. There's a really interesting story involving the Stryker family and how they found out about this. But the McMorris is the real jewel here. The McMorris is about 21% of our land package, and it is just a treasure trove of mineralogy that the field team can't wait to sink its teeth into. Our best guess, as we've said in press releases, is 2 years to explore that, use standard exploration techniques to figure out exactly where the best approach is, and then to go get it. After that, there are 3 other producers on the past producers on the Black Diamond. I don't know which one we'll do next. That'll be the result of exploration, development, whatever the field team thinks best. But we have 5 past producers to put into production in Arizona and 1 in Idaho. Having said that, I've shared my thoughts, Paul, with you before, that we'll never put the 4th mine into production. If we have 3 mines in production, cash flowing, and our own mill site, some intermediate's going to come along with a large checkbook and take us out. Now, do you want to pause there for questions, Paul? Or do you want me to keep going?
No, Peter, you know what? We have a few questions for you, but if you want to bring up your slide.
Well, I was going to say, Paul, I can go ahead and ask some of these questions.
Okay, cool.
Okay, perfect. So we do have a question here about the metaverse. Obviously, that's going to be a huge one.
Yeah.
So Peter Bell had posted online about the potential of making a video game where you can poke around an old underground mine and search for ore. Is what you're doing something like that?
That's been discussed. That might be in the next iteration after the next, so 2 iterations from now. Our next iteration, we think, is going to be somebody actually producing silver out of a mill, picking up rocks, putting it in the mill, pushing a button, cranking a handle, and a silver bar comes out the other end, which is a non-fungible token, which they can take with them to their other worlds. Wow. After that would be poking around underground.
Very interesting. A couple of these are financial. Maybe we can wait until you're done the presentation because you might answer the questions as you go ahead.
No, let's do them now because then.
Oh, okay, perfect. So are you fully permitted and do you own the properties outright?
We own some of the properties outright as patented lands. We have 1 small option to a family in California, and the rest are your standard BLM lands.
Okay.
We are fully permitted at the Buckeye. We would have to go through the process for the McMorris. Limited permitting in Idaho because, again, patented lands.
Okay. Here we go. Here's a good one. How much cash on hand and well, you mentioned the royalties. So how much cash on hand?
We had raised $6.2 million when we went public as of December. The panflation has killed us in some areas, like rebar is up 300%, cost of shipping is up, Trump imposed tariffs on our equipment out of China. So to be cautious, we're currently closing off a financing right now. We went public at 30 cents with a 50-cent warrant. We're doing this at 40 cents with a 60-cent 2-year warrant. We wanted $500,000. We're currently at about 2.2, and we're closing that off now. So we have more than sufficient cash to get into positive cash flow.
Excellent. Which you expect will be, shortly in the next.
My best guess is we'll get our first check from a smelter in May.
Phenomenal. Which brings me to another point. Can you touch on the treasure room and the potential?
So the treasure room is such a great story. The Murphy family has been looking for the treasure room for 50 years.
Wow.
There are historical maps that show exactly where it is underground, but twice the family took a run at it and they couldn't raise money to complete the job because when silver's $7, it's tough to raise money. The timing on this was perfect. They ran into Mr. Carter in 2010, I believe. They first got the property in 2011 and been working it since. The Murphy family runs a mine training safety school. So when you watch the video of them blasting into the treasure room and you hear those excited voices, that is genuine and well-deserved enthusiasm. There are drifts. There was a collapse there in 1873. Until 1873, they direct shipped ore from the treasure room on muleback to a smelter. So think how high grade that had to have been to justify that cost.
Wow.
So you look around that video in the treasure room and all you can see are beautiful colors. We've run samples. We haven't released them to the public yet, but you know and I know when you've got those beautiful colors, there's something in there.
Now, Peter, is that video available for anyone to see or?
It's up on our website.
Okay, excellent. We'll share that link with everybody.
I do warn you, there's some mining language in there because the boys were extremely excited, but
Okay.
they deserve respect.
Nothing that you haven't heard before.
No, or said, but they deserve to be excited about that. They worked really hard to get there and the shareholders are going to get a huge win out of that.
Excellent. So here's a great question. How long do you feel you can produce from that first mine without further drilling or definition of the ore?
That's an excellent question. We get that a lot. We chose not to do a PEA. We chose not to do a resource estimate. It's a large scale vein-based system. Some of the veins have been tracked for up to 2 miles at surface. So how do you get a PEA on that? How do you do a resource estimate? You'd have to drill every 25 meters, go down a certain depth, but then the report itself would have to contain so much disclamatory language as to be meaningless, right? We didn't drill to the foot of the vein, so we don't know. We might pinch and swell. And so we just said, no, we're going into production. So I can't answer that question at law, but we're built for the long haul. This is not a short-term mill. The boys built a fantastic mill on site. So we're here for the long haul.
And what about the environmental footprint?
Minor. We're very aware of our ESG. The field team talks safety at every meeting. This is a gravity ball mill. There is no acid in it. So there's no liquids to remediate. We do have a tailings pond after it comes out and out of the concentrating table, but that's just water and the same material that went into the ball mill at the other end.
Okay.
So, in a worst case scenario, let's say the mine collapse or whatever, we can always go back to the tailings and rerun them.
Oh,
but that's worst case scenario disaster planning.
Okay. So copper is very high price recently. Is there any copper potential?
Our CEO has some bars at his house that they produced out of test production in 2017, 2018. And these silver bars have an orange tinge to them because of the high amount of copper in those bars. If you read the 43-101 done in January of 21, there's a lot of copper mentioned in there, both in the treasure room where the highest copper graded 30%, which is an astonishing number, and across the entire property. Plus, there's the strong indication of a copper porphyry underlying the entire property called the Richmond Basin. Wow. Except porphyries are by definition high tonnage, low grade, and it appears we'd be high tonnage, high grade, but a lot of work will have to be done to get to that point.
Okay. And so there's a question here about the milling. Hold on. How much ore can you process in one day? And you touched on it, but can you briefly explain the process?
Sure. The presentation that we're going to go through in a second has the SEPRO in it and pictures of the actual site. It's plated for 125 tons a day. I assume it's going to run at 80% of capacity because I'm a skeptic. And I assume 300 producing days a year, which gives us 5 to 6 days every month for normal repairs and maintenance.
Okay. Here's another good question. So if you're not drilling, how are you able to determine where to extract the material?
We're underground. We're looking at it.
Okay.
And the other half of that is we have our own assay lab. Now, some people have taken shots at us for having our own assay lab, but they're thinking like a junior explorer. We're a producer. Every producer has its own assay lab. Otherwise, how do you know where to grab the material from? Mills are oriented for a certain range. Now, let's say for this conversation, we're aiming for 20 ounces of silver per ton. If you put the high grade through, then your tailings pond is going to be richer than most people's mines. If you put the, right, if you get, let's say it's 80% recoveries on 200 ounces, that means you're putting 16 ounces back into the tailings, which is insane. If you put low grade material through, then it's not running efficiently. So we'll be taking samples all day, every day, and run them in our own lab. You take them from the face, you take them from the truck, you take them from the conveyor belt, you take them as they're coming out so that the field team knows exactly what is in the mill at any given time. And that's how you run an efficient business.
So we have a comment here. It sounds amazing and almost too good to be true. So what's your toughest challenge that you're facing right now?
I can't control the price of silver, but as a team, we've decided we are not selling forward. We all think that silver only has an upside, and selling forward would be slitting our own throats at this point. So we're not doing that.
Well, Peter, speaking of silver, right now live, it's $26 live. I mean, what's your break even point? I mean,
Again,
how much margin do you have in?
Again, no PEA, but we have our own lab and we have our own mill, which gives us much more control over our costs than many others. So we expect to be a lower cost producer, but I don't have an exact number for you.
All right, cool. But you do have a good margin here. You're not talking.
You're trying to get me in trouble with the regulators, Paul?
No, I'm not.
Thank you.
I'm okay. And everybody look at the silver chart and you'll understand what he's trying to say.
So let me put this another way. Brian Crawford is our CFO. You guys know Brian. Do you think he'd let us do anything without having a spreadsheet that made him happy? Birks Bovaird is our chair, also the chair of Energy Fuels. You know, that little $2 billion US company? You think Birks would let us do this without having a spreadsheet? So we're pretty happy with our internal numbers.
Okay, one follow-up question on the permitting, Peter. How long do the permits last down there? Are they perpetual, some of them, or are they renewable on a yearly basis?
Excellent question. I have no idea. I would expect, so we have a dynamite permit, which is kind of fun. I would expect that would be annual, but I don't know about the others. I will check and get back to you. Okay. And I'm half expecting somebody to text me the answer by the time we're done.
Right. You touched on how much you're going to get into, how much ore you can process on a daily basis, and if you could augment that. So do you want to go to the slides now and bring a little bit more of the presentation back up?
All right. Apologies to everybody if I screw this up.
No. And thanks to some of the people on the call today. Nice to see you on there, Ed, and Willie as well. Thanks very much for being here.
All right. Silver Bullet Mine's imminent silver production, plus a potential copper porphyry. Come on. Why isn't it moving? Sophie.
Try up and down as opposed to side to side.
Okay, there's different ways of doing this. Go back to here. We'll do it the old ugly way. This is the disclaimer. Basically says, believe nothing I'm going to tell you, and we have to qualify all the information. Now we get to the good stuff. This is the plan in chronological order. Raise money, get listed, build the ball mill, put the Buckeye into production, plan for the Washington mine, do usual exploration to restart the McMorris, and then explore the copper porphyry targets in Arizona. To the right is the outline of our plan for the Buckeye, taking into account historical records and our own work. Highlights of the 43-101 report. This is old school mining. So I encourage you to go back and read that. It sets out some of the grades and what the author of the 43-101 report was thinking. Where we are. And the majors that are near us. Rio Tinto's dropping about $3 billion into Resolution to get that into operation. Nope, sorry, that's Freeport Mac at the Miami complex. My mistake. I don't know how much Rio Tinto put into Resolution Copper, but from our property, if you get up on top of one of the hills, you can actually see into the open pit at the Miami complex. That's some of the ore from the Black Diamond and specifically from the Buckeye mine. That's the Murphy boys blasting into the treasure room. I think this was the second blast and it was the third blast that actually got them into the treasure room. We did a lot of infrastructure investment that allows us to be into production for 6 weeks. And then the sale of the doré and the concentrate mitigates risk going forward. Historically, the ore was direct shipped, as we talked about. So we've invested into the office, assay shack, storage pad, security, site roads, on and on and on it goes. And that rock there is an actual sample taken from the treasure room 2 weeks ago. I don't know if that has been sampled or if it's being shipped up here so I can show it to investors, but man, does that thing have color in it. These are the bars I was talking about earlier. These are at John's house in Oakville. And you can see they're kind of orangey, and that's because of the amount of copper that's in there. This is the mill site. Last April was when we purchased this. Construction started in September. That was an empty field. And from September until now, that's what the field team has done. You can see the ball mill itself. You can see the conveyor belts, the sorters. They've just done an incredible job in a very short period of time. I mentioned that the SEPRO was in the presentation, and here it is. For those of you who speak SEPRO, you can see the entire process there. And on the bottom left is the actual ball mill with the guards, and you can see the green motor off to the right. There's got to be a gear chain in there, a gear in there somewhere that transfers power, and I think it's the red thing tucked in behind the ball mill. So for those of you who don't know, there are actual steel balls in a ball mill. You turn the ball mill, the steel balls bounce around, and they beat the crap out of the material until it's in the size you want to go onto the concentrating table. Now, the McMorris is also part of Black Diamond. And although we're going to go to Idaho, I'm going to stick at Black Diamond for now and do Idaho next. After the Buckeye is started, do the usual exploration work at the high-grade targets of the McMorris. It produced 500,000 ounces at 250 ounces a ton, which is just astonishing numbers. There's a shaft that goes down 650 feet. There's a massive shear structure, a vein that's 5 feet wide. Underground sampling includes 45 ounces per ton. Remember that 30 ounces per ton is considered bonanza. Now, those numbers with the asterisk beside them are historical only. We have not done that work. It predates 43-101, and more work will have to be done to prove up those numbers. And again, the McMorris mine is the source of the legend of the Lone Ranger's bullets, which I think is pretty romantic. In 1987, a geologic report was done on the McMorris. This is a publicly available document. Predates 43-101, so the usual cautions and caveats and warnings apply. But the geologist in 1987, using some pretty harsh assumptions, calculated a gross economic value of almost $500 million US for the in situ silver and gold, using $450 gold and $7 silver. So for fun, that report's available at our website. Go find it, open up a spreadsheet, pop in current commodity numbers, and see what you calculate for the McMorris gross economic value. It represents about 21% of our total land package. So of course, we're going to have to do more work to prove this stuff up. And Sophie, here's an answer to your question, complete with pictures. These are taken from the 43-101. There are 3 zones at the Black Diamond that have potential for a copper porphyry. Soil sampling program was carried out in 17 and 18 that returned areas of anomalous copper. And this is the results of the sampling program. I encourage everyone to come back and take a look at this on their own. The numbers are very, very strong. So the second thing we'll be attacking will be the Washington mine in Idaho. I discussed its history, how we came to own it, talked about the blended bulk sample. We also did grab samples. And the numbers that came back in the grab samples are astonishing, like 59 to 139 ounces per ton for silver, plus lead and zinc recoverable values, which just add credits. Again, for context, 30 ounces is considered bonanza. We're 59 to 139. But what's wonderful here is there's 13,000 feet of mining access already in place. It will need some rehabilitation, mainly timbering, to ensure that the mine team is safe. But that development is already in place, which means we can quickly get into there and start hauling rocks out. Here's our cartoon of the Washington mine. More work will have to be done to prove up the gold zones. Historically, there was largely a gold vein and a silver vein running through the property. They were laid down in 2 different geologic eras. The only reason that matters is the smart people can look at the ore and say, oh, that's silver ore and that's gold ore. At the time when silver was 50 cents an ounce or whatever it was, the miners did not want the silver. They wanted the gold. So that when they ran into the silver, they either hauled it to surface or dumped it into an adit or a drift or whatever. So that rock is available as well, and they've cleared to where the silver is. So a lot of the hard work has been done for us. Executing the plan. Cap table. This assumes that the last tranche of the financing has not closed yet. I'll talk to the CFO later today to find out when that's going to happen. That'll take us to around 60 million shares outstanding and about, I think, another 3 million warrants at 60 cents. As you can see, there is no cheap stock. We backed into a CPC. We ate up all the initial IPO paper, and there is no cheap stock. So there are a couple of warrants at 50 cents, at 30 cents. The majority are at 50 cents. More warrants at 60 cents and options at 30.
Peter, can you touch on, while you're on this page, who are significant shareholders?
The management group as a whole has about 30 million. And then after that, it's 2 institutions and then accredited investors and retail brokers.
And the warrants in the money, the 30 cent, well, no, you have any warrants? 50 cents, you're close to in the money. Is there any force on them?
No. It's funny, when we were doing this, everybody agreed on the structure fairly easily. We had a good team that was working on it. We had some outside help. We agreed on the structure with the CPC pretty quickly, the pricing. We spent more time discussing the accelerator than anything else. And we finally came to the conclusion that shareholders who were taking a risk shouldn't be forced into exercising. But I have told the team, we should, our only KPI, our only measure of success should be how many of those 50-cent warrants get exercised. If we do our jobs right, they should all get exercised.
Okay, and just to bring this up, you're in a financing right now.
Yep.
And how much is open? How much is available for anybody out there? If they wanted to participate, they can contact you directly, or they can contact Sophie or I, and we can point them in the right direction.
Yeah, call me. You know, we had said our maximum was 2 million. We're currently at about 2.3. We'll have to go back to the exchange for permission to increase it. So if anybody is interested, please get to me today. Get a subscription agreement in. They're available at the website, and we'll do battle with the stock exchange to get you your paper.
Okay. A couple of other questions. Are you basically done with the presentation, Peter, or did I stop you there? Or?
Well, there's just the team.
Okay, cool.
Right, there's John, John has built about 200 mills and processing facilities around the world. He is the perfect person to be in the CEO chair for this project. Mr. Bovaird, I spoke about earlier. Mr. Wortel is our geologic engineer on the board. I'm VP Capital Markets. I've been around for a bit. Ron Murphy on the ground, mining industry professional, and he runs a mining safety school down in Arizona. We are tremendously lucky to have him and his entire family working with us. Brian Crawford, most of you know Brian, best CFO I've ever worked with. And Eric Baylog is helping us with investor relations, with our thinking, both traditional and online. Those are the actual bars at John's house. Now we're trying to spell SBMI there. We did kind of a good job, but those are real bars taken from the ground.
Looks like you're using the metaverse to do that. Peter, a couple other questions came in.
Okay.
Copper is at a
Sophie,
okay.
Sophie, can you get me back in the meeting, please?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
When do you think you're going to start working on the other properties in earnest? I mean, you've touched on them, you know what's there potentially, but when are you going to actually get on there and start doing some work?
All right.
So again, the question, when are the other properties going to be worked on in earnest? You know, like when are you going to put the time on there?
When we know more about the McMorris, I think it'd be premature to be exploring too many properties at one time. It's not good cash management, not good risk management. So if we're pulling cash out of the Buckeye, we're pulling cash out of the Washington, let's go explore McMorris and let's be prudent. And out of every paycheck, you take a little bit of money and you sock it away. You don't reinvest everything in the ground. You build a war chest for when disaster happens.
Is there a lot of copper around you already and other properties, not in your property? And how significant is gold on your property? This, like, especially with the silver.
If you go back to that map in the presentation, there are seniors all around us. We have NDAs with 2 of them, and some of them are helping John with our thinking on the property. We've had one group tell us, oh, it's sort of like patting us in the head. Oh, how cute for you. You're doing silver. Let us know when you get to the copper. There's copper all around us. As for the gold, the treasure room yielded 18 grams of gold per ton. I don't think there's going to be a lot of gold other than the treasure room at the Buckeye, but hey, I'm a lawyer. What do I know? There is a fair amount of gold at the McMorris, and there are indications of gold at the other historical mines.
All right. Another question came in. They like this. The too good to be true question. How did you get these properties? They just seem like, I mean, you're going to be in production very quickly. And so how did you get all these properties?
You know, a rock and roll band, you hear for the first time, you go, wow, those guys are good. Yeah, they've been together 10 years. They're an overnight success, 10 years in the making. And this is much the same story. They've been at this for 10 years. They nearly lost the properties twice. Silver went down to $7. They couldn't fund expansion. So they put everything they could into keeping the properties alive until silver came back to, I think, $16. And then woof, off we went.
Okay.
There's another question here. Do you feel that your cash flow will be able to fund your future activities at the current silver price?
Yes. Again, no PEA, so I have to be careful. But oh my God, yes. Like if you look at mines in the area and their financial statement, their costs seem to bounce between $11 and $15. Now it's hard to compare because we're a pure silver mine, at least with the Buckeye, and they're copper, gold, silver, lead, zinc, manganese, all the usual suite of materials. And they're all large operations. So there's a lot more cost baked into that. We're fairly sure we will be one of the lower cost producers in the region.
Okay. And Peter, I'm going to ask you a question. This is coming from me. I know you've explained the process, like your ball mill, but can you tell us, you don't have to do anything else. Trucks will come and pick up the material, give you a check, go process it, and then give you the balance of the check. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Can you explain that a little better?
When we had our budget meeting at the board level on this, you know, I don't mind asking stupid questions till I understand what's going on. So we pour a bar. Yeah, it's going to be about 92% silver. Yep. Then what? Well, the answer is there are smelters in Globe, which is 10 miles away, and there are smelters in Phoenix, a smelter in Phoenix, which is an hour and a half drive away. And the process is archaic, but it works. Hey, I got 70,000 ounces of silver at 92%. Come pick them up. Okay. And they show up in a truck and they test drill a few bars because, believe it or not, some people still paint lead and try to get that. I know. I was shocked to find that out too. And then they write you a check on the spot for 90% of the gross value of the shipment. And you get a 10% adjustment within 45 days.
Wow.
So that's why I said we should be in cash in May. So if we produce through April, we call the smelter, they show up with their truck and they hand us a check.
Perfect. That's what I thought. So, I mean, this is simple. There's not a lot of go between, not a lot of processing, everything pure and simple.
Yeah, and we can't get above 92%. It's just not economically viable for us to rerun it.
But the tailings eventually could be redone and you could get something out of that, right?
Yep.
Okay.
We talked about that. Do you mix the tailings in with the new material coming in? At what point are they truly tailings that you're just leaving there? It's an active conversation.
Okay, we have a question here from David. Have you done metallurgical work on the ore?
Yes. John Carter is a metallurgist, and we've had other people take a look at it as well. Don't forget, we did that test program in 2017, 2018, where they ran, the test to see if they could actually extract the mineralization from the host rock. And obviously, from the site of those pictures, they can.
Okay, I got you. I'm just making sure we got all the questions. Is silver on the USA list of strategic metals?
The first time I was asked this question, I said yes, and then I went and checked, and it's not, which I find surprising. It's not on Canada's either.
Would copper be?
Yes.
Okay. Sophie, do you see any other questions? I think we pretty much touched on them.
Yeah, it looks like we're good.
So I was asked earlier a question about risk, and I didn't fully answer it, so I rambled onto something else. First risk is price of silver. Second risk is if something bad happens to John Carter. So that's a risk we can manage. I've told him never to leave his house, right? Eat only good foods, and we're going to take a key man policy out on him. John's not happy about that either, but it's a risk we can manage. So we have a duty to think of these risks and then manage them. So we're going to take key man for a year in case something untoward should happen to John. He is the hub that the silver bullet wheel turns around right now. The rest of us are merely spokes.
The boots on the ground on your properties, they're all locals, I'm assuming. There's nobody from the company there, or is anybody from Silver Bullet on site with them?
Well, we hire a management company down there.
Okay.
And the management company takes care of those things, but they all consider themselves Silver Bullet people. For example, in the 2016, 17, 18, when silver's at $7 an ounce, the team still came into work every day without being paid.
Wow.
Okay.
So, I should talk about our assay lab.
Yes.
The head of our assay lab just finished building a lab for Freeport Mac down the road, also in Arizona. He has a multi-year career in metallurgy dating back to 1972. He is as obsessed with being precise as Brian and Burks are with their spreadsheets. His lab can measure to 1/10,000th of an ounce. We have our processes set up on our website for anybody who wants to review them. Our QA/QC is extremely careful. And as I mentioned, we're pulling samples every day. Some of those will be bagged, and once a month or so, we'll send those to an independent lab for corroboration.
Okay.
Also working in the lab is a gentleman named Vic. Oh, Vic, I'm sorry, I forgot your last name. Apologies. But a registered assayer with the province, with the state of Arizona. So we've got some great talent in the lab and great talent in the field.
All right. Peter, you have a closing statement for us? What do you want
investors to take away, besides the fact that they're going to be cash flow positive by May?
I understand the feeling it's too good to be true. I sit with Burks and Brian, and we argue about what's going to happen, what's going to go bad, what can we fix? And we're running out of things to fix. Like, we're in the home stretch. Get some WD-40, get your socket set, tighten a bit on the ball mill, and we're good to go.
Got you.
And so the takeaway is the hard work is just starting. So now we have to run the mine and get the other one into production, then run the Washington up in Idaho. But it's a wonderful, wonderful story and one I'm happy to be part of.
Excellent, Peter. And as usual, thank you for your presentation. It's always a pleasure to have you on. Nice
Thank
to
you, my
just
friend.
chat with you and get the answers out there. To everyone on the call today, some really good names. Glad to see you made it. Ed, Willie, thanks for joining us today. If you
question?
have, yeah, we do have another question. Who's
Yeah.
And
that?
are you going to send the presentation around, Soph?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank
But
you.
let's just get Dave's question in before we log off. At 125 tons per day, can you send more ore to that local mill? Or can you send more ore than that to local mills? Sorry.
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, we'll get David to call you. Maybe he can discuss it in more detail. Again, Peter, thank you so much for today. Much appreciated as always.
Nice to
Thanks.
meet you.
Thanks for everybody joining in today. Everybody take care, and we'll keep you posted on what's going on with Silver Bullet Mines. Thanks,
Bye, guys.
Peter. Take care.
Thank you.